Welcome back to New Realities. I am here with my good friend, Zachary Fader, and we are going to go through part 4 of Maps of Consciousness, which has been a very interesting series for me because it is about a deep investigation into the self. And I feel, especially in this time, what else do we have to do except investigate ourselves? You're locked away in your room by yourself, nothing else that you can complain, or you can say, I'm going to take this opportunity to look at the parts of myself that need to be examined. So when we emerge from the chrysalis, we be better people, or at least that's my intention. You can do whatever you want. So here I am with Zachary Fader, who's a good friend of mine, and Zachary, let's just review the last 3 weeks as far as what I remember, just the highlights. First week, we talked about the trauma that's deep in everybody. The second week, we talked about how people don't want to really look at their uncomfortable feelings. And in the third week, last week, you started to break down the structures of those uncomfortable feelings and say, okay, what is it about certain issues in our life that make us feel uncomfortable, and what have we done to avoid it? And why don't you just pick up from there? Just to review, what are the 3 main ways people avoid their internal conflict?
Sure. And thanks again for having me, Alan. And for, those who have followed us on this journey for 3 weeks, wow, I salute your staying power. That's extremely impressive. This is one of the longest and most detailed explorations of phenomenology on the internet, or at least on New Realities. So that's exciting. And yeah, thanks for the summary, Alan. I would add one thing that we were also doing that has always been really, really important for me personally, is this idea of entering into an exploration of the psyche in the way that we would want to engage any important campaign, right? That is rife with ups and downs and potholes and mines. And so we really started by saying, you've really got to have some kind of connection to awareness, or the energetic heart. We could call that the kind of metaphoric sword and shield. I have a ton of metaphors for it, but that's good enough. Part 2 would be understanding what the journey into healing really looks like, because there is an objective stage-related journey to healing that we all should be really, frankly, teaching our teens, if not our toddlers. We're able to actually understand that, and we try to tell ourselves, and we have been, since the Babylonian times, with our great stories and our epics. We've told stories about what it is to go into the underworld, but we haven't actually got a contemporary, modern, simplified explanation that we should all know. Go ahead.
Sorry, I don't mean to interrupt you, but I wanted you to finish that. But when you say the world, you mean, just to clarify, people listening, the underworld, the dark parts of ourselves that we don't want to face, is what you're calling the underworld, right? Is that what you're saying?
Yeah, I'm equating the underworld with our unconscious trauma, which we all have. We all have a minefield of unconscious trauma within us. And it's not just a field of minds, it's also the lens through which we see the world. Right? So this isn't just stuff that is actually not affecting us and kind of, don't poke the beast or the bear because, better just kind of let sleeping dogs lie. There are all these ideas around, when or why we should address trauma. And the truth is, trauma is already addressing you, all of us. It's actually the lens through which we interface with the world, and it actually predetermines the world. So if you can kind of safely say that if anyone has never actually done any work on their own pain or their own trauma, then you're seeing a very distorted reality. And there's nothing necessarily wrong with that. It's the kind of thing we kind of want to be just aware of. you know, because what I think has been happening since the very beginning, and we can see this now more than ever with just the culture wars that we're seeing. This idea that we, you know, this is one of the other ways that we started this conversation is you just look at mainstream conversation. We can't agree on basic facts. We really can't. And when you look at it from a phenomenological perspective, from a psychological perspective, from a psycho-spiritual perspective, you're realizing that the reason that's taking place is because of unhealed trauma. We're actually not able to see reality clearly. And the only degree that we can do that is the degree to which I've actually cleaned what I sometimes call like the windscreen of my own vehicle through which I'm using to drive through life. That windscreen and all the bugs on that windscreen, that's all my unhealed trauma. And if I don't know that that's actually a thing, then every time I interface with you, I say, wow, Alan, you really need to wash your face, man, because you're just covered in bird crap. And it's actually not your face. It's actually my screen. Your face is beautiful, as we can see here today.
Right, right. So, okay, so let's pick it up where you left off, sort of, but just recap the challenges that you say come to investigation. Like if someone has something uncomfortable, someone said something to you on the street, or your mother calls, or whatever.
The girlfriend wants to have a talk.
Yeah, right. It's like, oh no, what did I do now? And most people in general want to avoid the discomfort to the ego, because it comes down to ego. Like, you know, Paulo used to say to me, did you see how you talked to that person? Did you see what you did? You know, it's like,
see how you treated that waiter at the vegan restaurant like shit, Alan?
Yeah, exactly. Did you see what you did? Did you see how unconscious you were? And it's like, really? Yeah. I was unconscious. I thought I was just asking for what I wanted, or something like that, you know.
Right. And no,
So
it's a great example that you're giving us, because we've all been there and we've all done it. And I would even argue that to varying degrees, we're all still doing it. And we're not actually talking to the waiter.
No.
We're talking to our father, we're talking to our mother, we're talking to the trauma from the past. We're talking to, essentially, we could say, there's mom and dad, there's siblings if you have them, there's culture, there's your youth, right? Everything up to, let's say, 25, because after that, traumas, unless they're really catastrophic, they're a lot less. Usually it's kind of stuff like that. And then ancestry and epigenetics. And then every so often a past life will pop up. Like if you're a therapist working with energetics and with awareness and with certain modalities that open this stuff up, eventually you're just going to get hit with a past life, and you only have two options. Either you reject it out of hand because that's just outrageous, or you realize that, you know, the University of Virginia has been doing research on that for years and there's a lot of evidence for it. And you have to just put a box there for like, all right, all past life goes into this box, and we just work it. And what I've realized, I will say this because I know you're interested in this stuff, is that more often than not, past life seems to be almost in the way that, you know, the old great American comedian, author of Huckleberry Finn, used to say that history doesn't repeat itself, but it rhymes. The same thing happens with trauma. Past lives get connected to epigenetics, and we don't exactly know the answer to that, but I'll tell you, it's like I've had enough experiences already where I'm like, is it possible that as a result of past lives, you'll choose certain families to integrate into because they actually rhyme with those traumas, because they do. And then the youth, it will rhyme again in youth. Certain things will get it. There'll be like attractor sites that traumas, certain things will take place in youth. And then culture will express that, then parenting, and then on into business and relationships and partners, and then children. And it just keeps going.
Okay. Well, I mean, that past life is great, but forget about that for a second, because when you said that family stuff, it reminded me, I think it was after last session we did. I feel like this is therapy session, even though we're talking more generally. But after the last session, I had a dream, maybe that night, that I was swimming underwater in a pool with my brother, my younger brother, 2 years younger than me, who I've had more conflict with than my other brother. So I'm swimming underwater, and there's a shark in the water. And somehow we pull it out and he says, oh, it's just a baby shark, like it was harmless. But it was just strange. It was this because the being underwater represents the unconscious if you're looking at dream symbology. So I would have this dream of swimming some dangerous underwater. And then it was either my brother or someone else who says, no, it's just a little shark. It's not like it can't really hurt you type of thing. But that was a result of our last session. So I thought that was kind of interesting.
That's kind of amazing, actually. I love that dream. I
Yes,
mean, that's right on the money.
yes, yes.
Wow. Well, let me ask a question.
Sure.
Did you see the shark?
Yes, I saw the shark. It was swimming towards me,
Did it
but
look like a baby shark?
it only looked like a baby shark after it got out of the water, after maybe we brought it to the surface. That's interesting. I just made that connection right now.
You brought
It
the shark to
only,
the surface.
once the shark was out of the water or to the surface, it looked at baby shark less threatening. So, yeah, that's
So do
was
you
so
want to,
that
can we
happened in
use,
my.
so can we use,
Yeah,
maybe we don't have to go too deeply into it, but can we use this a little bit? Would that be okay with you?
Yes.
So
No,
this,
I wonder what that shark was. Yes, what that
let's do a
represented.
little, let's do a little, let's do a little 5-minute lecture on dream interpretation, right?
Okay, great. Yeah, love that. Yes.
So for me, there are a few ways to interpret dreams, but really one of the kind of bottom lines for me is that anybody who's working with dreams, and I work with dreams all the time, I love dreams. I mean, we think we actually have to be connected to our dreams, and I think it's important for all of us, even though most of us don't have time, to journal our dreams as much as possible, because life is so confusing. One of the guaranteed ways we can get reliable insight from the deep unconscious that is vastly more aware than we are in our conscious mind is to access our dreams. And so once you've accessed them, like this one, for example, one of the great ways to start is to see what I describe. I say, what is the underplumbing of the dream, the underdynamics. So in this one, the underdynamic, there are two things, the underdynamics, and then what Jung would describe as the kind of the objective meaning, or the collective unconscious element of it. So the underdynamics of this is you're with someone and you're in a potentially dangerous environment, right? And absolutely, it's pretty well established now that the unconscious likes to be associated with deep water.
Right.
So you're clearly in the deep ocean, which is beautiful. And it would be totally
one aside before you go further. I'm just curious, if I didn't, and this is a little separate, if I didn't know, like on my conscious level, that deep water was connected with the unconscious, you think I still would have dreamed it up that way because of the archetypal nature?
Yes.
But that's separate from the question. So
the
go ahead,
is,
continue.
Yes?
I
mean, Jung and the neo-Jungians would say that your unconscious, of course, which comes from thousands of years of development, does connect to an objective interpretation of symbology. Like your deep unconscious doesn't. This is the big thing that neo-Jungians kind of argue about. They're not interested in what do you feel about the dream, what did you feel about the shark, what do you feel about the water. They're like, there's a whole objective level where it's like, if you're in the ocean, you're going deep into a part of yourself, period. Period. Yeah. And if there's a shark that comes, right, then that's absolutely 100% an image for a potential danger. Then it becomes the question of, where does the dream eventually go with this? Does it, so, because there are two ways that you could read this, right? Is your brother, your younger brother, who could be me in that dream, right? Yeah. Is your younger brother naively suggesting that a fully grown shark is actually a baby shark, and actually we should actually be afraid of it? Like, for example, if we were doing bad work here and we were too deeply going into, let's say, Alan's stuff in public with other people looking, that might be a perfect example. Like random people who we don't know commenting. For all we know, that could be the circling of sharks, right? A feeding frenzy off this very sacred experience. Right. Well, let me just clear. It wasn't actually, we weren't in the ocean. We were in a pool, but we were in deep water. But yeah, no, that's a good
that's a good connection to one of the symbols of the dream, that maybe doing this in public is dangerous. But my feeling is it has more to do with my relationship to my brother, and maybe how I could have been nicer, or growing up together, you know, and the pain of that regret, maybe something like it could have been, you know, we're very competitive and all that, and I was 2 years older, so it's, I think it has more to do with that than a public display of a feeding frenzy here. I think
Sure.
it's more to do with the, I mean, this is just my feeling, but I liked what you said there. It was something I hadn't thought of. So, okay,
Yeah.
so continue with where we're going
And
with
also,
this.
just to qualify, the way I like to do it is usually when I'm working with a dream, I'll always take the subjective. I'll always say, like, what do you think it is? Like, what do you feel about this?
Right,
We
right.
take the subjective, and then you also look with the objective. And the objective is way harder. You know, sometimes there are like examples of, you know, someone will start a new job or something, or they'll start a new project and they'll say, oh, I had this great dream and it was a turtle giving birth in the middle of summer, and summer represents like the blooming of everything and this is new life. But the objective interpretation of, you know, if a turtle actually gives birth in summer, the likelihood of its offspring surviving is very slim. So that actually may, you see, the objective meaning actually can seep through much more differently.
Oh, that's interesting. So,
Right.
okay, I did not have that dream. Okay, so let's go to what, no, I like what you were saying about dreams in general being a doorway to the
Yeah.
deeper mind. So, yeah, so continue and let's work with this.
Well, you know, it's like what we're actually getting into is where I'm really interested in terms of this map, right? Obviously, we love to jazz about this, but where I really think most people are missing, not because of any fault of their own, but just because of culture right now and where we're at, is that we don't have a conveyor belt to get through some of the ways in which we've inherited these minefields. So you bring up your brother, right?
Can
This
you
would be
really
right in that
describe the
category.
minefield? Yeah, but just describe, when you say minefields, the mind people don't have any idea what you're talking about. What do you mean by minefields?
So I'm describing minefield just as your constellation of traumas, like my constellation of
Okay.
traumas, right? And it all starts, the place where we have to start, because I've started in all the different places you can start. And there's very clearly a phenomenological hierarchy of where the body and where the psyche wants to start. And it usually wants to start with mom and dad. Like that's where it
Of
starts.
course, because they are your fundamental reaction and neurotic imprint on our personality. So yeah,
Exactly.
of course.
And
And
some,
depending on who you've been around more has a deeper imprint on that psyche. Yes, yes,
right.
yes.
Well, if you want, we could do a little experiment now just to show you one of the
Yes,
ways that I light all this stuff up, because all the stuff
let's
that we've done
do it.
before in these last few weeks, right? It's like first we have to understand what's going on, more or less. Then
Mhm.
we've got to get the heart and the awareness online, because that's going to be our tools for when we find ourselves in the middle of the trauma, which is coming. Then we have to go into this kind of the descent into the trauma and all those stages that we talked about last session of like, you need to know how to get to the underworld. Like you're going to see the two-headed monster Cerberus and all of these other things. Yeah, we have to understand that whole process. And then once we've understood that, and it's kind of a little bit like, all right, all right, all right, all right, all right, eventually we dive in. And this would be the diving in. This is what it's all about.
Okay, 1 second. I'm just checking with the chat. I just have a few comments here. This video series is called Maps of Consciousness. I dream often about deciphering maps, attempting to get from one place to another. Does that mean anything? I'm lost. I never get where I want to go. That's one comment. Let me read the other, unless you want to respond to that first. Dreaming of maps.
The answer is in the question, you know, I'm lost. I mean,
Yeah.
needing a map right there, needing a map, like constantly, like reoccurring dreams are loops within the psyche saying like, you know, we don't have a good enough map. Like you're trying to get out of something, but we don't have a good enough map. It's a very, very clear symbol. And what you need for that is you need to find a guide. You need to find a guide who has a map that resonates with what you're going through.
Right. And this is what you're doing. And the other comment was, by John Tin. My mother and father think I'm crazy for being open to the ancient idea of reincarnation, past lives. Thank you for the series with Zachary. Blessings. Oh, that's nice. So, all right.
Blessings.
So let's do the practical here, because I think we, for the last 3 weeks, it's been pretty philosophical. And now I think you want to show a practical solution and what you guide people in your work about. So, okay.
Yeah. Can I just, we're going to go through this on, so people are going to kind of get a taste of where this goes, because it's really not about the intellectual. But I just want to respond to that kind gentleman's comment about his parents, about not understanding him. Because I just think he's touching upon something that I think is really punctuated this particular time in culture. And it seems to be almost like one of those, what I call a kind of a silent epidemic underneath everything, which is there seem to be a lot of sons and daughters, and it's likely been happening forever, who have been born, and I describe it as the sons and daughters are older souls than the parents. And that is a very complicated dynamic to work out. I've worked with that specific dynamic many times, so I know it very, very well. But I think it's one of those conversational pieces that's really important just to put on the table, because it's not easy to be biologically younger, but psychospiritually older than your parent. Because the burden of responsibility of managing that relationship falls on you as the child, which is tremendously challenging and difficult, because as the child, you actually want the parent to play the psycho-spiritually older role. But if they can't, then you have to usher yourself through that process with someone who can help you do that. And I've seen that's been one of the things that's been rife in the chronic illness world. Individuals who either haven't acknowledged that to themselves yet, even though they know it. And then what they do is they end up suppressing their true wisdom out of a kind of misguided respect for the parent. And that's where it goes really.
What do you suggest then? Just believe what you want anyway? I mean, what do you suggest?
I mean, what I suggest is you have to go through a process, and I can give a couple of zingers though, but they're not going to cover someone getting through the whole thing. But the idea is,
no, that's okay. We don't have to go that deep into it. That's fine. I think you got it. Data map, I think, is what you're saying, and we need a community.
The one thing. Give me a moment. I've noticed. I feel like I know YouTube is a very fast-moving medium.
Okay. No, I appreciate it.
Sometimes we can't go that fast. It's like what I would say to him and what I would say to that question, right? Because this is really, really key for a lot of young people. And I think the reason I pause is because I'm remembering so many of the individuals I've worked with. This is heartbreaking, because at the core of it, you have to let go of your parent being the parent that you needed.
That's good. That's
that's a death and a rebirth.
That's deep. That's a deep one for me. I think I talked about that last week, but I think that's a deep one for most, that their family, their brothers, their sisters are not. But the problem is just a little different angle. You then look for relationships to be what you didn't get when the parent or your family wasn't what they needed. And of course, the relationship never be that either. So you sort of have to make peace with that in yourself, or those relationships aren't going to work out, because they're not going to be what you need either. That's
and I really don't think anymore that we can ever just make peace with it. I think we actually need to project that pain onto someone who can hold it with sacredness and work through it and unravel it. Because if we don't actually project it onto someone consciously and say, all right, you know what? I've had a shitty relationship with my dad. I'm going to project that onto you. Are you okay with that? Well, I have a shitty relationship with my younger brother. So why don't we work together on that? And
But most people do that unconsciously.
Yes.
If you can be lucid enough to say, do you mind if I just do a little projection of my family onto you? Then, I mean, in a way, I think you've also done this with me because we've been friends for a while, and I've seen different sides of you, and now I'm seeing this
We've gone
mature.
through a few projections together, I think.
Yes, yes, yes. Like when you weren't talking to me when we were in England, when we were doing that retreat with that fam. Anyway, that's another story.
That's
But,
great. Yep.
anyway, okay. So why don't we do? No, I appreciate you addressing that, and I appreciate you taking your time with people. And you're right. It's digital. It's quick. It's moving. Boom, boom, boom. And we can make our own time. We're we're all in quarantine. There is no time. But yeah. So let's. Okay. But now we're ready. If you're ready for the next level here.
Yeah, sure. This can be a kind of a private thing where we can explore it together. And I want you to, I mean, people can be here and watch what's going on, but I want to show you just a modality.
Okay.
And there are many modalities that we do this. And what I really want people to take away from this, that they can kind of use, is some kind of ordered process that takes what I think is really the best that's out there right now. Because where we eventually go is we go to our family of origin. That's where it all started. Because all of the problems that we have in our current life begin with mom and dad, siblings, culture, youth, epigenetics, ancestry, past lives. That's pretty much it. That's what you got. And there is a way of very comprehensively and diligently and slowly going through each of those layers and gaining tremendous insight into what you previously would have thought was just like some random reoccurring problem that you have in your business or with your relationship. Like these are the roots of it. This is actually where it's all starting. This is why, as much as I appreciate a good life coach, and there are many good life coaches out there, this is why life coaching often doesn't get to the root, and various other modalities. Even good business consulting will not go to these roots because they don't touch the deep unconscious. And so you'll try to work out, why is your startup not going somewhere? Why isn't this happening? Why is it? If we never address epigenetics, we don't address trauma in youth, we don't address mom and dad, well, it's like you're trying to make the flower bloom without watering the root. You keep spraying water on the flower, it's not going to change. So that's
So what you're saying, you're going to give us some practical tools, or we're going to do a little demonstration, which is practical, not just philosophical, that will work with underpinning the psyche. Okay, so let's. Okay.
So as a setup for anyone who's maybe watching afterwards or who's watching now, if you want to join in, go and find 6 tincture bottles. Tincture bottles like this, right? Reishi, anything.
Yeah.
Andrography, like whatever you got. Clove, wormwood, whatever.
Tea tree.
Just get 6.
Oregano oil, very good for.
Lovely.
Okay, so I got models here.
And just put them to the side. Put them to the side, like just put them on the bench. They're like basketball players on the bench. Game hasn't started yet.
Okay, they're all on the bench. Okay, good.
Okay, and you have a space in front of you, Alan, that's kind of clear and open, right?
I do have a little clear open space here. Yes. Yes, I'm ready to go. Space.
Just take a deep breath. And so first we just get into our bodies. And for anyone who doesn't know how to do that, you can either use your breath, you can focus on your heartbeat. Heartbeat is a great antechamber to the somatic. And then I'm just going to invite you, Alan, just very gently. I mean, I don't need to guide you because you're such a pro at all this stuff, but you just feel your body, because I want to see if you like this. I've never shown this to you. Just feel your body and then really just kind of fall into a space, and then glancing at the bottles, just ever so gently, choose a bottle to represent Alan as a child.
As a child.
Yeah. You just whichever one feels right. And then ever so slowly, what I want you to do is I want you ever so slowly to use the space in front of you and just place this bottle that represents you as a child wherever it feels like Alan as a child would have been standing in the world. And what I mean by that is, was he squarely in the center? Was he right at the front? Was he standing in one of the corners, making sure he could see everybody? Just give yourself permission to place him wherever he was.
Okay.
And then I want you to use if the front of the bottle is where his eyes are, make sure he's looking where he would have been looking as a child.
Okay.
Okay.
Well, it depends where as a child. I mean, I did suffer a big trauma about the age of 7, 8, where I thought I was in the center, and then we moved. I lost that center and got thrown off the center. So do you want to go for that trauma, or do you want to work with that trauma? Or you want to do post-trauma?
I mean, in this scenario, what I would do is I would say we take that, but I want to show you what comes up. I want to show you what comes up. That's even just mentioning that, if this was a true session, we would hold that there and we might even go into it. But for our purposes, let's hold it. Let's hold it. Because I think also what we want to do is we don't.
No, that was really important to me, what you just said, because before I moved, I felt like it was in the center. When we moved to this whole other place, I was outside the center. That was the trauma. Anyway, is that going for that? But you just brought that up because, I mean, I've looked at this before. It's not the first time, but I never saw it like going from the center to being outside the center. So, okay. So I got myself here.
And so just to say, like, obviously what would be really important just to, anything that is spoken of, I've discovered in this realm, even casually, is extremely meaningful. It's almost archetypal, and we must take it. So if I truly honor you, I know that it's really important for you to feel centered and to be part of that center and to support that. Like, that's my respect of you, right? And I would just qualify one of the reasons I would say that we're all pretty much trauma illiterate is because all of us in all our relationships, at some point, we will start to hurt each other. It's just part of relationships. And as we gain more trust with each other, we actually take greater chances in doing so. And I don't see that as a bad thing. What I actually see is that we're actually, when we gain trust, we actually give ourselves permission to go deeper and deeper into our wounds that are projected and introjected. And that involves hurting. So I qualify that too, because the antidote to that, what I really think is this next chapter, is those of us who are within our core group, we become literate with each other's wounds so that we can honor them. So I always have that in my head now, and I know that if I love you and if I care about myself, because you're just a reflection of that, then I keep that into account. And even in a therapeutic session, we want to make sure we don't go out of the center. We always stay in the center. I've noticed maybe, in our conversations, we want to stay in the center. We want to say where you feel centered, and I would want to support that. So anyway.
Okay.
So here you've got the child, right? Take another deep breath. And just feel the child in the world. Notice where he's looking. Notice where he's standing. And you can let him go.
Okay.
And just feel. I want you just to look at him to make sure, like, do you really see him and do you really feel him?
I do.
Okay.
I do. Me.
Take another deep breath. Because we want to get really centered for this. Usually when I do this kind of process, you want to kind of feel a pin drop, because that's the level of sensitivity we're working on. So now I'm going to invite you, really take your time, and I'm going to invite the master in you, Alan, to really observe the field your somatic awareness, your somatic body, and everything that's going on as I invite you to do this. Choose another bottle ever so slowly to represent your mother. And then ever so slowly bring your mother in and just place her where she would have been standing and where she would have been looking in relationship to Alan as a child.
Okay. Do you want to see it from your point of
Yeah,
view?
let's see it. Let's see it.
You see this? This
Yeah,
is me.
So just describe it.
And this is me, sort of center. This is my mother looking at me.
Yeah. So bring the camera back up.
Okay. Okay.
Right. So just take a deep breath. So how does that feel?
It feels a little comfortable, I think.
It's what?
A little. It's not. It's
Yeah.
not full of love. I mean, which you'd
No.
expect, you know. I feel it's a little uncomfortable. It's not awful.
Yeah.
It's just not, when I tune into that now, doesn't feel like I'm totally free just to be me.
Yeah. So I just want you to just breathe through this, because it shouldn't be uncomfortable, because that's not her position. That's not her rightful place. I playfully call that the Mexican standoff.
Uh-huh. What does that mean?
Well, it's like it's a standoff. It's a duel. It's like we should not be facing off with our mothers or our fathers like that as children. It's not a generative position within the psyche. And what I love about a process like this is it renders what I call the original shape of your psyche in this lifetime, the original shape. And so let's pan that out and let's extend it just a little more, because we're going to work with it, right? We're not just going to leave you there, but I want to complete. I want to just take another deep breath and choose one for your father. And then very slowly feel, where was he standing and where was he looking in relationship to both of you?
Okay, my father stands here. It's my mother, that's me. Doesn't stand next to her, but he is parallel to her. So it's sort of a triangle in this sense.
Right.
Where's
he looking?
What?
Where's he looking?
I have a direct, he's looking at me. I have a direct connection to my father, and they parallel each other. So it's my connection to my father's not being interfered with my connection to my mother. That's two separate relationships going on here.
Yeah. Yeah. All this is played out. And what we would do is we would not bring your brothers in yet. I just want to be really clear about that. We eventually go to brothers, but there's an entire tectonic web that is created in the family unit that is illustrated by this, that we want to work through and untangle so that you can actually feel it. Mm-hmm. And one of the things we see here is that, yeah, a lot of pressure was put on Alan.
I didn't see that. Where you get from? Where do you get there was a lot of pressure?
Well, because if both of your parents are looking directly at you and you're looking directly at them, right, that's actually not a generative place for the child to be. It's a little uncomfortable.
Yeah, I don't quite uncomfortable with my father.
Try something. So I want you to just try something. Just slowly move the bottle of your mother a little bit towards you and see what you feel.
Well, that might even actually feel a little better, I think, for some reason. I don't know why.
Now turn yourself to face your father.
Okay. Yes. Okay, good.
And what does it feel like if you move your father a little bit closer towards you?
That feels a little uncomfortable for some reason. Feel like now that's getting in the relationship between me and my mother, possibly.
It was always there. Turn him to her.
That feels okay.
Now move him closer to her.
Okay, now I feel less connected to him because I do have a good connection with my father. But I just want to tell people watching, this is what they call family constellations, or a particular way of working with family constellations, where you lay out your family and get objects to present them, and then you just move around and see what feels comfortable. Okay, so I'm back with
Well, it's
my
not really
father.
it's not that simple because it's really all energetic, and we haven't really gotten to the energetic piece of it because I don't think we can in public.
Well,
But let me show you one more thing.
okay.
See what it feels like if you actually just turn your back on them.
Well, that actually feels pretty good, I have to say, because
Right.
I'm now on my own. I cut them off, and now I actually feel more free not having that. So maybe
Right.
you're right. There was pressure put on me, but turning my back on them, yeah, just it's being in my own space. That that feels good, actually.
Yeah.
It does.
So this
Um,
this configuration is a variation on one of the top trends that I think is kind of all over the place with us, which is that one of the parents, often the mother, doesn't get what she needs either from her father and then gets repeated in her husband. And then one of the kids has to take up that slack. And in so doing, actually sacrifice some of the resources that they need themselves. And that has a whole cascade down the nervous system, into the organ systems, and into behavioral patterns and limiting beliefs and all the rest of it.
right. It goes back to Alice Miller, the drama of the gifted child, where if your mother or father's not meeting your needs, you have to meet the needs, and then you never develop a sense of what the child's needs.
Let's
Yeah.
try one more thing. Because the
Sure.
only other thing that's going on there, I kind of wonder, is your mother is on the masculine side.
Is it? Okay. Well, I think my mother was more present. I think that's why. But anyway, yeah, than my father.
See what it feels like. And just to be clear with other people who are watching this is one variation of how to work with these energetics, but the purpose of this is to actually go deep into the energetics and to work them in various ways that as I said before, I don't think is entirely possible on a YouTube live. I wouldn't do that because there would be a part of your awareness that would be too aware of everything and mine too, and it's not.
I knew what you were going to say. See what happens when your mother and father change places, right? Were you
Yeah,
going to
well,
say?
just because like I want to just show something there is that the bottle of your mother is the largest one.
Right, I picked that for
Right.
some reason. Yes.
No doubt because she was more present in the life, right?
Exactly. More
And
present.
what has often been the case for generations, the mother often has to try to play two roles. That's still taking place now. And a lot of that is because of the nervous systems of men that have been warriors for so many years, right? But just slowly see what it feels like. Where I would take it slow, Alan, is have your parents just look at each other, have your father move towards your mother all the way. So he's actually see how close he can get. And then
Yeah.
just as if you were kind of speaking for him, he just said, let me take my rightful place in the masculine role.
Okay. Now that feels more comfortable, I have to say. I'm going to turn around and look at them. That does feel more balanced. How interesting. It really
And yeah, you
actually
can feel
does.
it. And this
That's the energy. Yes.
it gets
Yes.
this is like just powerfully. I mean, people are breaking down all the time with stuff like this. I mean, it's like this is my part of my day job, one of the modalities. But let me add one more thing to you.
Okay.
Just kind of maybe close your eyes for a minute and just connect to the spirit of your father and just say to him, I give you that role that maybe I got pulled into. I give it back to you. And then you kind of point to your mom and just say, she's your wife. She's your responsibility. I'm going to give that up. And if you want, bring in your mom's dad.
My mother's dad.
Yeah, give it to him too.
Say that to him, or
like she's your daughter. She's, that's what she really needs. Most mothers or fathers, when they're getting what they think they need from a child, what they really always wanted was what they didn't get from either their husband or their father or their mother. So that's something that in the internalized psyche we have to work through.
Your mother. I think she got what she may have needed from her father. I think she's looking for it from her mother.
There we
Um,
go.
that feels more right. But just but what I want to get back to the energetics, when change places with my mother and father, I feel that energetic in my body release attention around the trauma of a child. Really feel the energetics of that rightful position.
Right.
That's really remarkable and interesting and all that. So yeah, now she's giving it to her parents now, saying she didn't get what. Now I even feel more relief because that pressure's taken off of me.
Right.
So
Right.
yeah,
Right. Exactly.
so that's good. That's good therapy right there. That's
And
good.
and then where I would just kind of tie that in just for people to see the larger implications of it is this is why I call that original configuration, I call that the original shape of your psyche in this lifetime. And it's a
The
core,
which is
it's a core
what,
blueprint.
wait, what's the original shape? What it is now or what it was when we started?
What it was when we started.
Okay. Okay. That's the
Right?
original shape.
And you want to know
Okay.
that because we keep that with us and it's a blueprint.
Even though we change the energetics of it right now, we just change the energetics of
Well,
it.
no, we can no, I mean if it's worked through, it's like a scar. You know, it's like a huge cyst in the body. You can clean it out. You can get range of motion and total functionality. But, you know, you'll probably always have a little area where you're just kind of aware of, you're massaging, you're taking care of, and also you're informing yourself on how you work your life because it creates a predisposition to certain strengths and a predisposition to certain weaknesses. And if we want to go even deeper, it also predetermines and actually engenders subpersonalities that we talk to inside of ourselves for the rest of our life and shadow. So you can take
Yeah.
just this one configuration and unpack like programs that are everywhere in your life, everywhere. And if we go back to our original meetings, right, I want to tie everything together and then I know this is YouTube, Alan, and I know we got to keep it quick with the zingers, right? But I want to give people the big.
I just want to say for people watching at home, would you suggest they create that initial configuration with them, their mother and their father, and just turn those bottles around and face them and move them to see how it changes?
For
Or
anyone
change
who's
it?
really interested, for anyone who's really, really interested, you have to do it diligently because what's going to happen if you're not being guided, right, is that you're going to get into a
Right.
tangle. What I would
Okay.
say is do it one move at a time and diagram it. Diagram it and chart it. What's the, like literally draw it. If you don't draw it, you're going to get mixed up. If you do it casually, that's also another message to your own inner child that I kind of care about you, but I'm actually not willing to do the work to really connect with you. And the inner child will respond in that way. Also, I would say for anyone who's really interested, this is what I'm going to be doing in the course. The actual training is like step by step, giving people actual diagrams that they can populate with what's going on so that we can actually identify the entire configuration of your psyche from the ground up.
But you also work with individuals one-on-one,
Yeah.
right? That's just something. Okay. Okay. So let's continue. This is good. This is interesting and therapeutic. So, okay. Got that. Where do we go from here?
Well, you know what we could do is, I mean, there are various things we could do. So for example, you know, what sometimes I'll do is if someone's married or someone is on their second marriage or their third marriage, you can actually do another configuration for the first marriage and then the second and the third, and you can watch how those roles are repeated. And you can see the degree to which those tangles have either continued or been interrupted. What I would,
mean, I just want to say it's interesting when I think of family constellations. I think of this person I know who's the daughter of a mother who left her father, who was the daughter of the grandmother in the same situation. Now she's carrying out the same situation and has a daughter that might carry out that same situation unless something that's like
Yep.
4 generations that I know of as a possible continuation of a pattern. I mean, just in my observation. I mean, who knows what's really going, but from what I know of, and that's exactly what you're saying. Unless we heal the trauma, we will pass that on to the next generation or our next relationship for that,
Yep.
right?
Yeah, we're destined to. We're absolutely destined to. That's
Possibly
why
energetics. Yes. Yes.
yeah,
Go ahead.
this is why I think it's so important to actually make a formula for this, an actual model that can be taught essentially to our young people, because it's kind of astonishing when you go through this and you really start to understand the implications, how we're still not teaching this alongside reading, writing, and arithmetic when it should be. I mean, we absolutely should be.
You're right. We should teach family constellation in first grade. That will, but of course, that will bring in a lot of the family stuff that is so taboo to deal with at that age. That
It's not going to happen like that anyway. What's going to happen is that it's going to mushroom in the families that are able to do it, and then at some point there'll be a tipping where, you know, a Montessori school is going to start it, and you'll have to have like opt-ins for parents. You know, it's going to be like, all right, do you actually want to do this? Because let me say one more thing, is that when you start to pan out what we were doing here, right? Essentially, you want to look at it like layers upon layer of imposed dynamics upon you and trauma and upon me. And what I call that is the conditioned self. So we're, as a soul, we enter into this body and we enter into all these dynamics and all these contracts that we didn't choose, that we didn't decide. Okay, maybe we could say the soul chose them. We don't actually know that. It's a new age idea. If you want to believe that could be true, I'm happy to go with it. But the point is that as a child, you don't know you're having them. And as a young adult, you don't usually know you're having them. And then you got to be 30 years old, 40 years old, 50 years old. You start doing therapy and you realize these things have been running your life forever. Everybody who I've worked with and we've started to really pan these things out, eventually there comes a moment where it's like, oh, this was my conditioned self. Overgiving on this angle, undergiving on this angle, certain qualities overexposed, other qualities underdeveloped. And then becomes the transition that you're talking about actually within families that will eventually take place, where we say, are we willing to break with those contracts that we were born into and start writing new contracts? And that's actually the sweet spot of my practice. My practice has actually always gone to the individuals who are actually doing that work. And it's very challenging. And if anyone's interested, I can send them an audiobook that, it's not an audiobook, it's an ebook that I recently finished specifically for chronic illness. And I called it When Chronic Illness Becomes a Spiritual Transformation. And that's when people who have, let me say this one final thing, Alan. It's for people who have so many, what we would call maladaptive dynamics within the family unit imposed as the conditioned self, so many that the entire system collapses and they become the sin eater of the family. In that scenario, and I've worked with many individuals, and it's one of those fabulous work that I love really deeply in my heart, is when they start to rewrite all those contracts, there's a whole transition that takes place, not only in themselves and in their health, but with the family. And 70% of the family usually don't like it, and 10% actually finally see that they're stepping into their power and love it. And it's a real transformation that takes place. And oftentimes it's the only thing that actually supports healing.
I just want you to explain further the idea of contracts that we have with our family members and how that plays out and how we can rewrite them. Or do you have to do all the heavy therapy before you rewrite them? Or can you just rewrite them? Well, talk about contracts, what that means.
It means that we're all born into an existing traumatic system. Like the world is already pre-existingly a priori traumatized. So we have all stepped into families that are traumatized and that are actually in debt. All of our parents in various ways were in debt. And when a child comes along, naturally you spread that debt out to them in various ways, right? So what happens to the child? The child is like water that actually just fits the container that they're given. So if you have to lean a little too much into mom, that's the container that's the kind of the gate that you begin to develop as you walk. You're a little bit leaning to the right, or you're a little bit leaning to the left. And that becomes normalized because the body and the psyche is, the great adapter. It just makes compensations. It's the great compensator, as you know, as an acupuncturist, the body, if my knee goes, my hips will compensate, and then my shoulder will compensate, and then my neck, right? The same thing goes down the generations. We're all compensating for our parents, who were compensating for their grandparents. And so when we step into existing contracts, those are the contracts that we don't sign, but are kind of signed for us. And then we wake up at 18, 19, 20, whenever it is, and we realize, I really have no voice with my father. Wow. And I really can't get what I need from my mother. And that's a contract.
No, that's a contract. So I can rewrite that contract. I'm just asking a question on the chat by Wendy. What is the method for integration of parts of ourselves we rejected to programming? Or maybe you'll get to that. But how do we integrate? But if that's what you're doing, this constellation work is the process of integration.
Well, it's not the constellation work on it. Lots of people do constellation work. I think constellation work is a really great tool to identify the dynamics and the contracts and the wounds that need to be addressed at the core level. But the thing that really does it, and really what I'm most interested in, which is why I started with, you must have access to awareness. You must be able to generate energy in your energetic heart in the center of your chest. You have to do that because the core rewriting traumatic tool of this entire enchilada is energetic literacy and fluency. I'll repeat it. Energetic literacy and fluency. And I'll unpack that just for a second. You need to be able to identify energies in your body. That's the literacy. You need to know what you're feeling, when you're feeling it, and where you're feeling it. I'm feeling resentment in my throat, in my thyroid. I'm feeling powerlessness in my solar plexus. I'm feeling fear in my kidneys. And then the fluency is you need to be able to generate antidotal energies. And by the way, this isn't that hard because we're like, energies are being generated within us all the time. Do you feel love sometimes? Yeah, sure. Do you feel happiness? Yeah, sure. Do you feel joy? Yeah. So energy is being generated in you. But the time has come for us to actually take an active participatory role in that and not simply be a leaf in the energetic wind of everything that's around us. Can you generate gratitude? I know you can generate gratitude, Alan, as an example. You need to be able to generate gratitude. You need to be able to move it into areas of your body. You need to be able to generate the energy of no, enough, the boundary energy of the masculine that says, for example, in the scenario like this, I'm not going to take a burden that's no longer mine. I give it back to you, and I give it back to who it was responsible for in the first place.
I could rewrite that contract, even though I made it as a child, say I'm going to take on the burden of the family or whatever. And
exactly.
To write that contract, what do I do to rewrite that?
It has to start energetically. And I will share you why I know this is because I tried to do it behaviorally before. I tried cognitive behavioral therapy. It doesn't work. It doesn't work. Behavior modification doesn't work. Limiting beliefs doesn't work. With all due respect to something like emotional freedom technique, you can try to tap yourself out of this stuff forever. It's not going to work. Acupuncture doesn't work. Why? Because what we would call the inner orphanage of children that are connected to these dynamics deep in the unconscious are energetic, and they're the ones holding the wheel of the vehicle, man. They're not going to let go.
So energetically, how do we do it? By
have to learn how to move
the compassion.
You learn how to move
Okay.
That's
move
why
energy
now
to,
you're starting to, now maybe it's starting to make sense of why I made such a song and dance about awareness and the energetic heart. If your awareness is not good and you can't generate gratitude, joy, appreciation, forgiveness in your energetic heart, then you're going to find yourself in the underworld of your trauma without a sword, without a shield, knowing not what to do, and just getting haunted by your past.
so you move to your energetic heart, your compassionate heart, and you start to feel the design of the old contracts, let's say.
Exactly.
You take a stand and say, okay, I'm finished with the old forms of dealing with my family dynamics, which has been going on, whether they're here or not. They're incorporated into us,
Yes.
you know.
What I would say is you do exactly that. But the way that we really do it is it's really attunement, because we have to attune ourselves. I mean, like a Geiger counter, so fine tuning to the energetic entanglement of the original contract. And it's the attunement to that that will give rise to the understanding of what is the energetic antidote. Because the way that we rewrite these contracts is not just a cookie cutter, throw forgiveness into it, throw gratitude, throw unconditional love. That doesn't work. That's old school. It's old news. Doesn't work. It actually takes attunement. So you need to attune to your own inner child's needs of what they didn't get in each particular maladaptive dynamic. Each one by one. So you got to go slowly. You actually got to listen to these kids. You got to really listen to them. And it's the attunement. And sometimes you'll try one thing and you'll realize, no, the antidote doesn't fit. So we have to go back and find what's the right antidote. Maybe it's anger. You know, a lot of people are shocked. Sometimes I'll do this process and I'll say it because I can feel it. And I'll say, you need to tell them to go F themselves. And sometimes
No,
people
of
are
course,
shocked.
it's up in the body. If you
It's
haven't,
in the body.
you have to express the anger that's there. Absolutely.
Exactly. And it's so liberating. And the amount of people who have never given themselves permission. And actually, this is also a big one, I think, in the spiritual community, because one of the big, I would say, pitfalls that we've had over the last 25 years probably is that too many of us went straight to unconditional love. And that actually is not psychologically coherent, because if my boundary is crossed and I don't hold you accountable and then I immediately forgive you, I betray myself.
That's right. You're just putting a Band-Aid on a gushing wound, basically.
Exactly.
Stop the gush.
I need to hold, we need to hold the other accountable. And and sometimes we need to throw the kitchen sink at them.
Yeah, you can't forgive if you haven't felt the depth of the wound. It doesn't heal. You have to get all the junk out of the wound to heal it.
Right.
Anyway, yes. Okay, I like this. I think this is really good. Now, where do we go from? I mean, you could do family constellations for days, weeks, months, every aspect, every relationship, but it would probably be healthy. It would probably be a way of freeing every little part of our psyche.
This is what we're actually exploring, is this idea of, is there a way, it's too labor intensive and cost prohibitive to work one person at a time. And I have a as much of a practice as I can manage myself now. And, it's at some point you realize, like, okay, this is beautiful, wonderful work. But that part of you that looks to the world and to the greater thing, I think a lot of us are thinking, we're not going to get everyone to enlightenment. That's all of that is rubbish. But what we can potentially do is give everybody an understanding of what they came in with, and what they need to course correct. It's a simple thing like, we all have a ship, and most of us are tilted in one way or another. We're tilted and we're rotated. So like I believe there's a way that we can give everyone an understanding of just how are you tilted, masculine, feminine, mom, dad, and how are you rotated, right? And some of the core things, and then to give you essentially the map of like, well, this is going to come up over and over again for the next 50, 60 years of your life. And here are certain things that you need to support that. And we've found that that's tried and true. So we can take it to the bank, and then you start to work with that. And that might be able to be created in a way that is simple, that is cost effective, and that really helps a lot of people at a very core level that we're not offering systemic clarity around. That would be my goal.
Right. But anyway, you're giving this course called Maps of Consciousness, which will be a map for individuals to track the wounds back to the child, which has distorted our relationship with the world. But of course, there is no one out there, an Oprah, especially, who doesn't have some kind of distortion in their field. I mean, I'm just calling on her because, she seems together, but whoever you think is together, they all have a distortion.
You get an
Whoever
inner
you
child,
might,
you get an inner child, and you get an inner child.
yeah, we all get an inner child that's been very abused in a way.
Yeah.
And
yeah.
the more abuse it's been, the more people act out in the world because that child needs attention.
Yeah.
And how old? Okay,
So
good.
I'd say, for just, if anyone's interested, try some of that stuff out and, get back to us. Tell us what you think. This was
What should they try out?
well, they can try out just some of the things that we've discussed over these, 3 or 4 weeks and, give it a shot. And if people find it valuable, I think we've, people really listen, they can follow it and get tremendous value. But what will usually happen is that at some point you may need some support, or you may want to have it a little more regimented. And yeah, people can tell us, my objective here is to have fun with you, Alan, and to share some of the things that I've been most interested in. And if people are interested, we can continue. And if not, that's great too.
No, that's my objective with you. My objective with you is to understand the map of consciousness that I think you have a good handle on, or have a handle on, and use it with myself to be clear, to be more together, to be more conscious, and to share that with who's ever listening. It's fun, but fun is not my objective here. It's to learn.
My objective is fun right now. It may not be yours, but I'm just saying, I'm at that place. I'm just saying, I'm at that place where part of me with this work is to really dance with it. I've been through the stage of investigation, trial and error. I'm really enjoying the beauty and the magic of what this sometimes and often brings. And I think. Can I say one more thing?
What?
Can I say one more thing just with regards to what I think is really important maybe to your audience? I know your audience is full of, great meditators and people who do a lot of spiritual work. Where this is really interesting for me is that the only reason, and I've said this I think before on this call, is that where this is really interesting is we don't go down to the underworld to hang out there. We go down so we can soar. That's the purpose of it. And I really want people to kind of get that I'm not interested in hanging around in trauma. I'm interested in doing that work so that our transcendent experiences get better and fuller and deeper, so that our connection to our mission and those around us get fuller and deeper. That's what all of this is really about. It's not about doing that work. It's why do we take our cars into the body shop for the oil change and all that stuff? It's not for that. It's so that we can go on a nice summer's drive.
Well, that's my objective in this work. So I want to soar. I want everyone watching to soar, you in communicating, because I think the world be a better place, a happier place, a more abundant and productive place. And I think there's no better time than now to reevaluate all the old contracts, old traumas. And as we come back into the world, do it in a different way. And I think this is the time to lay out the maps of consciousness. So let's continue for the next couple of weeks. And because I think maybe 1 week you can talk to the soaring part. I mean, I'm not we're ready for it yet, because I think you still have to unpack a few more of the disfigurements of the psyche.
Sure. Well, if anyone
But
has any questions, next week would be a great time to ask any questions if people want to just throw things out. I'm more than happy to share what I've noticed over the years working in this way.
well, I have some questions too for next week. But what's the website that you want to get your maps of consciousness? How people can find you? I'll put this in the chat, or you can put it there. Are you gonna put it in
this in the chat.
Put it in the chat here, and I'll put it in the chat on Facebook. Is this Eminence Institute? Eminence?
Yeah, course is being done with Immanence Institute. Immanence meaning God within.
Immanence means, that was what immanence means, God within? Okay. Put this in the comment section here and in the chat too there. Well, do you feel complete then for today?
Yeah, I feel pretty good. I think we covered
that was
a lot.
great exercise. I think what you think what?
I think
Sorry,
we covered a lot. Did you find the exercise valuable?
I said it did. I said I felt an energetic shift. I
Yeah.
felt a shift. My father and the finding the balance in the early dynamics, and it was an energetic tweaking, reconfiguration of my childhood psyche. And even though the history, and you might just want to talk to this before we go for a second, even though the history is remembered as a certain way, when we do the energetic shift, it's not a rewriting of history, but it's a reconfiguration that is generated back to the past somehow, right? Can you explain that?
This is why I will always joke that time travel is absolutely possible. It's a joke, right? But if you do trauma work for multiple years, you realize that we're changing the past, not what happened, right? Because we can't change what happened. But it's like a movie, a heroic movie, right? The hero always at the first part of the movie gets, an enormous traumatic event takes place. And then they go through the wasteland for like the rest of the movie until the 3/4 moment when they rise up and they overcome the challenges. Now, if they'd never overcome those challenges, if they'd never healed those original wounds, the past and the present would be one story. The minute they overcome them, those original wounds turn into almost like badges of honor and elements within them that they can be proud that they went through and overcame. So in a way, you are changing the past, even though that's not possible. So that's what all of this is about, and it is possible. I see it every time. I mean, you know me, Alan, I wouldn't bring you things that I hadn't tried and tested for, frankly, many years at this point, because I know that you've been around the block, and I wouldn't do that.
No, no, I'm not saying you would do that. I think
I'm not saying you would say I would do that.
I'm not saying I would say, but anyway, no, I'm just answering a chat here, but no, I think what you're doing with this series, and we'll wrap it up, is I think learning an effective means of communication to unpack all the insights you've had over the last, what has been 10 years or something you've been doing this work. And I think the highest level of soaring or attainment is to share with others, because there only is you out there.
Yeah.
Only me out there. Me talking to myself. You talking to yourself.
There's only Alan out there. And Zachary.
And there's only Zachary out there, and there's only whoever's ever watching. There's only Matt out there, or Jason, or whoever else has been there. But anyway,
I agree with you. I fundamentally agree with that. Is definitely a belief that I hold. That's my ontology. I don't think and the reason I would say that at a more, that's to be fair, that is a new age axiom that's bandied around all the time, right? But where I bring my own, let's say, soft scientific phenomenological mind to it, is that everyone that I've met over the years, the deeper I've gone into my own psychic structures, in some way will be reflecting some part of my own internal neural nets that I'm still working with. Either the ones that I marginalize, the ones that reflect my higher parts. And so it's always an opportunity to work with self. And if you really know your psyche very well, you can see that. It's when you don't know your psyche and you don't know yourself that someone can pop up and seem separate from you and different and alien. If you really know yourself, it doesn't really happen. Someone's always holding some space within you that you already have had some kind of contact with, even if it's a contact with an emerging part that is still mysterious, like that too.
Right. No, I think this is good. I appreciate your excitement and enthusiasm and going for it and putting yourself on the line by choosing to play in the field, you know, and dropping into these places that we're trying to rebuild that was damaged as children. So anyway, thanks.
Oh, you're so welcome, Alan. Well, it's nice to be with you. It's nice to hang out again. So thank you so much
Yeah,
for the
we used to
time.
hang out.
Yeah.
When you were in New York, we hung out. We did lots of, we produced great events together for people who don't know. We Bashar to New York. We did a huge Crystal Skull event, 10-10-10, which people are still talking about that. No, really, 500 people and probably 1,000 crystal skulls there. And
Yeah.
that
And I
was,
think were there like 5 UFO sightings like the day of, like right above Manhattan or something?
and we had Mayan elder, we had an Australian elder, Aboriginal elder. It was
Well, you know,
epic. So
I'm writing about that, so I'm writing a tell-all of our of some of our adventures, and that'll come out in a few years, so people can really see at the internal level, not just the theory, but what it really took to go through this wormhole with you and others. So that'll be fun.
right. And get to the
Love
other
it.
side. I mean, the journey's not over, of course. So
Yep.
someone asked, did you invent this therapy? I don't think you invented it. You took many aspects of many different parts and you put it together as your own map, I
Yeah,
would
we've been
say.
using multiple therapies throughout this. I mean, I certainly, but
Yeah.
what I've done is I've synthesized it into a conveyor belt
Right,
and a map. And it's still
right.
in progress, but I've, you know, we've got to a pretty solid place where I can roll it out and, you know, feel pretty confident that people are going to get a lot of value out of it. So that's where we're at.
And one more question. Well, this is Jason. How do you use trials and traumas of the past to build a better life? I'd say watch the past 3 shows.
Yeah.
And you will get a little roadmap. Also look at the link for the course. Now the consciousness course will be a deeper dive into all of this, right?
Yeah. And if anyone has any questions, send them to Alan, send them to me, and we can, you know, it could be fun to answer questions next time and just kind of spread out a little bit.
Do we want to invite people to Zoom room next week? Or do you want?
You know, I don't think we want to work with people individually. And the reason I say that is because it's deep work and you want to be, you know, YouTube is not a sacred place for that. We don't want to expose people to that. That would be the shark in the deep waters.
Okay. Well, I just went there. I just took a swim, but that's okay. I don't mind.
The water okay?
No, it's great. Thank
It was a
you.
baby shark, right? It was a beautiful baby shark. It had no teeth. It was just gumming you on the leg.
We didn't even bring in the rest of the family, but yes. No, that was great. No, that was very therapeutic and good and releasing. Okay. Then Zachary Fader from the West Coast. Here I am in the epicenter, and I think things are changing here. I think as we put out that map of consciousness, the whole world is going to be clearer and cleaner and sharper and rejuvenated. Say hello to the rest of the family, including and all the other people there.
Okay. All right. Love you. Take care, buddy. I'll see you later. Bye.
Thanks for doing this. It was fun.